Hey guys, Wave Nunnally here with Bible Unplugged. Welcome back to another segment of the series on the Sermon on the Mount. Today we're going to be looking at Jesus saying, "You are the light of the world." So in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, Jesus says to those sitting at His feet across the hillside there in Galilee, near the Sea of Galilee, during the Sermon on the Mount, He says, You guys, you new covenant members, you people that have become a part of this first century Jesus movement, you are the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden. What I want to do in this segment is I want to break that passage down into its component parts and look at each in light of what Jesus was seeing, what His audience was seeing, literally right there in front of them. The world of their origins, where they grew up, and how Jesus plays off of that, and then also use contemporary literature to really unpack what it is that Jesus is getting across. First of all, you are the light of the world. Where would Jesus have come up with language like that, or an idea like that, sort of like an image that He's conjuring up in their minds? You are the light of the world. Well, all of His audience, very biblically literate, would know that from their Bible that this whole storyline starts as far back as the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. There God is telling Father Abraham, the father of all the faithful that would follow behind him, I will bless you, I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. In other words, when God is choosing Abraham, He's choosing him to use him as a vessel to reach not just his people group, those who are descended directly from him genetically, but they're going to be intended to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. In Isaiah, we get another kind of picture or piece of the puzzle of this light of the world sort of idea. Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit on him, and he will bring forth justice to the nations. In other words, it's not just uniquely limited. The blessing of God, the presence of God, the covenant of God is not uniquely limited to the physical descendants of Abraham, but God's plan is through the descendants of Abraham to reach the nations. This is the case all the way back in the Hebrew Bible, or what Christians call the Old Testament. Another text in Isaiah 42, He will not be disheartened or crushed until He has established justice in the earth, not just in the land of Israel, but the whole earth. And the coastlands will wait expectantly for His Torah, the coastlands beyond the borders of Israel. In Isaiah chapter 42 again, I will appoint you as a covenant to the people, as a light to the nations. And there we get the first reference to the people of God, the people of the covenant, those representing God, serving as a light to the entire world, as a light to the nations. And that's what Jesus is playing off of when He says in the Sermon on the Mount, you are the light of the world. And so in Isaiah 49, this idea continues to be developed. It is too small a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob. That's too light of lifting. We've got an even bigger plan in here. And restore the preserved ones of Israel. By the way, I've fashioned this in its poetic parallelism so that you're able to enjoy the same thing that original hearers of the prophecy of Isaiah would have heard. To restore the preserved ones of Israel, I will also make you, here we get it again, a light of the nations, or a light to the nations, so that my salvation might reach the end of the earth. That's God's big picture plan, has been all the way from Abraham, to bless all the families of the earth through Abraham's descendants, as God's representatives, bringing good news and bringing the template, the paradigm of how to relate to God, how to live abundant life, etc. We even hear this in the later rabbis from around the time of Jesus. Just like the light of the stars can be seen from one end of the world all the way to the other, so is the light of the righteous. The light that comes from the lives of righteous people, people in right relationship with God. Just so that, like if Israel, God's covenant people, does the will of the Lord, they are like the stars. If not, they are like the dust. And I'd reference what we did back with Thy kingdom come and Thy will be done earlier in this same series. I would reference another segment, one that says that whenever you are in right relationship with God, you will be living a life that hallows God's name, that consecrates, that sanctifies, that brings a higher, greater reputation to God's name, even beyond the borders of the covenant community and reaching the entire world. Now let's take a look at the next little piece of Jesus saying, "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." Well, we're not talking about Old Testament Israel, Israel of the Hebrew Bible. Back in those days, the cities were much smaller, and they were built on the top of tall hills that would, as a city would be destroyed and then leveled off and rebuilt, it would continue to rise in height to the point that it really was a large hill. However, in Jesus' day, most cities did no longer set on the top of high hills. And from the time really of Alexander the Great, 333, 332 BC, cities moved down off the hills and were being built on the plain, on the flat land, because cities could then grow, they could expand, they could also be laid out in grids, much like Benjamin Franklin gridded out the city of Philadelphia originally. And so a city set on a hill in Jesus' day would be quite unusual. The cities around the Sea of Galilee, for example, think of Tiberias, Magdala, Capernaum, Bethsaida. Those cities are built right on the flat land. So what exactly is Jesus, what image is Jesus trying to conjure up in the minds of his listeners when he talks about a city set on a hill? There just aren't that many options. It would be highly unusual for a city in Jesus' day to be built on a hill. So we've got to go to the land of Israel and we've got to do some surveying. We've got to eliminate some places and we've got to look at others as possibilities. So the land of Israel lays out like this: from south to north, the Dead Sea, the lower Jordan Valley, the Sea of Galilee, the upper Jordan Valley, and where all of that water starts with the snows of Mount Hermon. Jesus is from Galilee, and he's specifically from the city of Nazareth here. And yet what we're doing is we're looking at the area of the Sea of Galilee itself specifically because this is the context in which Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount. Looking a little bit more closely at the Sea of Galilee, again, we have the cities of Tiberias, Magdala, Capernaum, Bethsaida, Gergesa is on the east side. We have another one called Hippus or Susita also on the east side. None of these towns around the western and northern shore are built on hills or artificial mounds that are called tells, T-E-L, and in the plural, tells, T-E-L-S. Rather, they're built on the flat land and are able to expand as needed. Urbanization that comes with the process of Hellenization or the spread of Greek culture and influence with Alexander the Great and afterward. Even more closely, we are going to look first at an area that is to the west of Magdala. It's in this cut right here, between two hills, and even a little bit further west at an extinct volcano. Now we're looking at it from an aerial shot. Here's that extinct volcano here, and that's a hill, but there was never a city that sat on it. There's another hill here. It's called the Mount Arbel, and there is, down on its cliff, there is a place called Arbel or Arbela, but it wasn't a city. It was a small Jewish village, and it couldn't be seen from most of the places around the shore of the Sea of Galilee. It's down on this northern slope, and then and could only be seen in a very small chunk of the Sea of Galilee. Beyond that, we have the plain of Gennesaret and the Sea of Galilee itself with the north shore. So we have to rule out the Horns of Hattin, the extinct volcano. We have to rule out Mount Arbel as a possible place for Jesus reference a city set on a hill. What are other possibilities? Other possibilities would include a town that is just east of the city of Bethsaida called Gamla. It's up in the direction of these Golan Heights, or what the Bible calls Golan or Bashan. So let's take a look at it from an aerial view. The city of Gamla is perched on this small hill right here. It's actually more of a village, but it can be seen from the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. Let's use the pointer. This city of Gamla here can be seen from the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, but that's about it. You go to the west side, you go to the east side, the southern end of the Sea of Galilee, and Gamla is not visible from those locations. Also, it's a question of semantics almost. Is it a city or is it a village? It's a relatively small village, even at the height of its occupation. Here's a close-up of Gamla, and you can see that its synagogue, which is in this area here, shown by my pointer, is actually not viewable from the Sea of Galilee because it's on the back side of the hill upon which Gamla is built. This is a view from the opposite direction. We're down on the Sea of Galilee here in the foreground. We're looking across the plain of Bethsaida. In fact, biblical Bethsaida is being excavated as we speak, and it is situated in this set of eucalyptus trees here. Continuing on to the end of the plain of Bethsaida, now we're on its east side, and rising up there on the east side of the plain of Bethsaida is the Golan Heights. And part of the Golan Heights is the city of Gamla, or the village of Gamla, built on a hill in this drainage system. Here's another perspective for Gamla, and we see the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee here, biblical Bethsaida here, the Golan Heights in the far background, the horizon, and then Gamla tucked away in this drainage system that empties its water into the plain of Bethsaida along with the upper Jordan River. So now let's take a look at another possibility. Another possibility around the Sea of Galilee would be the Mount of Beatitudes. The Mount of Beatitudes is located, see Capernaum here, just a little bit to the west of Capernaum in this area here. However, there is no city or village built there. There's a Byzantine church remains under the modern church of the Church of the Beatitudes, but there wasn't a city or a village there. Furthermore, this Church of the Beatitudes does not sit on a mountain or a hill. Instead, it's simply on a slope that goes down, continues to cascade downward into the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. So that's not really an option either. The next possibility, the next location that we could consider is a non-Jewish city called Hippus in Greek and in Latin, called Susita in Hebrew, and it's on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, just at the foot of these Golan Heights, or what is called in the Bible Golan and Bashan. So just off of the eastern shoreline of the Sea of Galilee is the city of Hippus/Susita. Let's take a look at that and consider that as a possibility. Well, now we do have a city, and it truly is a city, not a village, not a small town. This is a gigantic Roman city built on top of a really high hill. You can see the Sea of Galilee in the background, so you can see the proximity of this eastern shoreline to the city of Hippus/Susita. To its north, and this is the northern shore where probably the Sermon on the Mount was preached, and well within view of the city, the large Decapolis city of Susita. More on that as we continue our study. Here's another aerial shot. You can see the eastern shoreline of the Sea of Galilee. You can see that plain that is between the shore of the Sea of Galilee and the beginning of Hippus. And then you can see Hippus/Susita with its switchback, the road going up its face like this for people who are approaching with goods and services or just returning home, maybe after a good fishing expedition on the Sea of Galilee, if you're approaching from the west to the east. And here is Susita that I'm outlining with my cursor. Behind it, the horizon line, the Golan Heights. So the Susita is tucked into the Golan Heights, just off the shoreline, eastern shoreline of the Sea of Galilee. Another close-up now of those switchbacks, a way of accessing Susita Hippus from the west. On the backside, there is another and easier access point if you are coming from the east going west onto Susita. Now we're on top of Susita itself. Here you get a great view, not only of the Sea of Galilee, which I'm showing with my cursor now, but you can see the other side, and you can, at night, the lights of Tiberias dot the horizon, and then you can even see over into the Jezreel Valley, a place that Jesus could see easily from his city in Nazareth, and you can see just a little bit of Mount Tabor peeking out over the horizon there at the back of the picture. In the foreground, you see the results of archeological excavations and even leftovers from the Roman period. Here you see a fluted column here. Here you see a granite column. Here's a marble column. And these were the supports for gigantic buildings in the New Testament period that were public buildings, banks, temples, and that sort of thing, where Susita, Hippus, would rise even higher in height. And the literature actually talks about that with their beautiful facades that could be seen for miles and miles. Here's a picture from the opposite direction. Now we're looking east towards Syria and toward the heart of the Golan Heights, away from the Sea of Galilee, looking from east to west. And here you see very clearly the Dokomanos, the main road running from east to west, that would then eventually intersect with the Cardo that ran from north to south, and that would be a major intersection in any Greek or Roman city. These are Israeli barracks and bunkers that were built at the time when they were needed, because this was once upon a time, before the Six-Day War in 1967, a frontier city for the border between Israel and Syria. No longer the case after 1967 in the Six-Day War. Here's another picture, and you have the Sea of Galilee in the background, so now we're looking west again. And you see the city street. You're also able to see the remnants of buildings that collapsed more than likely during the numerous earthquakes in this area. And I've been showing you slowly the sun setting in the west. And now we're looking from Susita across the Sea of Galilee, looking west directly into the setting sun. Another picture even closer to sunset, looking down the Dokomanos, the main road running east and west, and then finally the sun has set. And we've got the beautiful columns from a Byzantine period church that was built on this site in the late Roman period. And here we have a beautiful sunset with the shoulder of Hippus cascading down into the plain, and then the plain ends in the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Beautiful pictures, yes? Can't believe it, but I actually took that picture. I'd like to show you a video now and just put into motion the things that we have already talked about, and maybe even do a little bit of review. The Sea of Galilee, the eastern shoreline, then you have a small plain, And then as the camera pans toward the east, looking toward the Golan Heights, you have the Golan Heights in the background, and then you have those switchbacks that we will fly directly over in this video clip that allow you to ascend the very steep hill on which the city of Hippus was built. Here you have a city on the Sea of Galilee that is set upon a hill. And not only that, but then you have these, imagine in your mind's eye, because you just saw the archaeology, you have those fluted columns and those that imported marble and imported granite, gigantic buildings, public buildings, banks, temples, etc., built on top of Hippus/Susita. This is truly a city set on a hill. And unlike Gamla, you can see Hippus, Susita, from any point around the shoreline on the Sea of Galilee. This will come out when we look at the literature of the period. Very, very obvious that this is a major point of attraction that everyone was familiar with. And it was used to give directions and mark distance and all kinds of things that we will see when we dig into the literature from the period. Again, we're still ascending Hippus, following the switchback road that runs right up the western face of Susita/Hippus, and just again, in your mind's eye, reconstruct this Decapolis city. That's 10 cities that were connected together in a loose federation and were never under one of the rulers from the family of King Herod. This city was not under the guidance, the rule of any of the procurators that Rome dispatched after the Herodian dynasty had kind of devolved and descended and broken up. Now we get a close-up of some of the archaeology. You can see the archaeology that has gone on here. This is that Dokomanos, the main road running east-west. And then we get up on the highest part of Susita. This is where the rich, the fat cats lived, and where the big, really expensive buildings were built. You see that a lot of this is white. That's imported stone. Doesn't come originally from here. The original stone is dark like that, volcanic stone. And then you get the Cardo here and the Dokomanos. And then you get, from the pictures, the barracks of the Israeli soldiers prior to the 1967 war. And then we go all the way to the eastern end of Hippus, and you see that it falls off pretty drastically on the east side as well. And then the plane resituates itself, or the helicopter turns back around and is going to now move in the direction of the west and the Sea of Galilee, which is pretty neat because you're going to get to review it from a completely different perspective. So now we're flying from east to west. The Golan Heights is behind us, off the picture to the bottom, and we're flying straight up the Dokomanos, the main road going east-west. You see the excavations on either side. Here are some of those columns, pillars that held up really large buildings up on top of the hill on which Hippus Susita was built. And now we see the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee. So hopefully putting that in motion and getting a little bit of review will help put that in perspective as we begin to look at literature, the literature of the period. So we're back to Matthew chapter 5, and we've done, you are the light of the world. And where does Jesus get that kind of language, even that idea? Well, it comes from his Bible, starting with Genesis 12 and then hammering all the way through the prophecy of Isaiah. I've given you as a light to the nations so that my salvation, my message of deliverance and rescue can reach the ends of the earth. The city set on a hill, well, we've looked at various possibilities, but eliminated most of them. And I think basically settled on the city of Hippus/Susita, one of the great Roman cities of the time, one of the 10 cities of that loose federation called in the Bible the Decapolis. You could even do a word study on that. Now, a city that's set on a hill and cannot be hidden. I think that you will see the prominence of Susita when it's mentioned in the literature. We get almost nothing about Gamla from the literature. Josephus mentions it in his History of the Jewish War, but just not a lot of discussion, a lot of chatter going on in the rabbinic literature, the most ancient stuff from the rabbis. But what we do get is a lot of mentions of the city of Susita. So let's take a look from and do a romp through rabbinic literature and see in what ways is Susita Hippus referred to in the works of the early rabbis. Rabbi Judah, who put together the first collection of rabbinic literature, the first collection that is called the Mishnah, Rabbi Judah said, "Behold, if two people went out from a certain city where the majority are non-Jews." So he's starting to talk about demographics, about the ethnic makeup or constitution of a specific city. And he gives as an example, like this Susita. So it's like he expects, Rabbi Judah expects everybody to track with him and know exactly what he's talking about. He's using Susita as an example of a place where the majority of people who are living happen to be Gentile. Here's another couple of texts. Rabbi Nehemiah said, Noah tied the wild ox to the ark of Noah. And it plowed furrows in the water as far as from Tiberias to Susita. So we're now using Susita as a marker for distance. Same thing goes on in the next rabbinic text. Rabbi Phineas says in the name of Rabbi Levi, the ark floated, Noah's ark, floated on the water as though it was floating along on two planks, as far as from Tiberias to Susita. So another time we have in rabbinic literature Susita used as a way of marking distance. Here's another text that uses Susita in a different way. These are the cities in the vicinity of Susita, the produce of which is subject to tithing. So now we're talking about Susita Hippus in terms of Jewish religious practice. It's not just marking distance, but dealing with Jewish religious practice. Enosh, Ein Tir'ah, Ram Barin, Ion, Ya'adut, Kfar Haruv, Nov, Chaspiyah, and Kfar Tzimach. These are little tiny outlying towns, but the connecting thing is their proximity to the main city in the area, which is Hippus Susita. So everybody knows about this city. Here's another one from rabbinic literature. Seventh year produce. We're talking about the year of Shemitah, or the year of release. Every 7 years, there's a year in which you're not supposed to harvest and sell the produce of your harvest. But seventh year produce is permitted to be sold if it comes from abroad, from outside the land of Israel. Rabbi Yossi ben Abun said, for instance, this rodkia that they go and sell between Susita or Hippus and Tiberias. So again, we're looking at religious practice being described in relation to this place that we have been studying called Hippus in Greek and Latin, Susita in Hebrew. Rabbi Ami permitted the carrying of materials like the knife for the purpose of circumcision, even on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do work on the Sabbath, but he permitted it on the evidence, on the testimony of women who were midwives who had witnessed the birth of a male child, who testified that when the child was born, the sunlight was still shining on the village of Susita or Hippus. And so here you get another example, not just tithing, not just dealing with the seventh year produce, but even a matter of Sabbath keeping. When are you allowed, if a child is supposed to be the 8th day of his life circumcised and it happens to be Sabbath or Shabbat? Well, you've got to make sure that that kid really was born at a time when he has to be sacrificed, when he has to be circumcised on Shabbat. So then what do? You go to the people who were participated in that birth And you got to have two testimonies, you got to have two witnesses in order to establish fact. That's the law of Moses. Deuteronomy 17, Deuteronomy 19. On the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every matter be confirmed. And so the witnesses come forward, the midwives who helped to deliver the baby, and they said, yes, the sun was still shining on Susita. In other words, the sun hadn't gone down yet when that baby was born. And so that day gets to count as a part of those 8 days that you count before the baby is circumcised on the 8th day, even if it's on the Sabbath. So things as important as tithing, as observing the year of Shemitah, or the 7th year, as important as the 8th day of a male child's life, which is the day on which he is circumcised, we are looking to Susita to determine time, to mark time. So then, what can we say? Our lives, if we are the light of the world, and Jesus' point of reference, and he's constantly using in his teaching stuff that lies close at hand as visual images, visual aids. The birds of the air, the lilies of the field, the foxes have their holes, the birds of the air have their nests, the gold on the temple, the whitewashed tombs. Jesus is constantly using visual aids that lie close at hand. And so if Susita could be seen from anywhere around the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee, if it's the only truly constituted polis or city that is set on a hill that could be seen from everywhere around the Sea of Galilee, if people were marking distance, determining Jewish religious practice, even marking time by Susita, sort of like Big Ben in London, then this means that when Jesus is speaking about our lives being like lights to the rest of the nations, to the rest of the people around us, they should look at us like a road map. They should look at us like Big Ben. They should be able to set their watch by us, because we are living lives of such covenantally consistent behavior and relationship with other people and with God Himself. This is Jesus' intent for His covenant community, that we live lives of such consistency, of such regularity, that people can rely on us. They can rely on us to do what we say we're going to do, to not do what we say we're not going to do, to live up to our agreements and our covenants, to live lives that are not here one time and one day and all the way over here on the other extreme another day, but to live lives of that kind of covenantal consistency, and to be a light, to be an example, to reflect His nature, to live a life that is very clearly a pathway that is marked, that moves in the direction of God and that moves in the direction of abundant life. That's the way that God has called on us to live as His lights to the world. That's the way that we step fully into this responsibility of living out a life like a descendant of Abraham, the father of all who trust, the father of the faithful. This is the kind of life that Jesus is declaring is in the future of every covenant member that is listening to Him on that hillside in the Sea of Galilee, and today in the 21st century as well. So may my life, the lives of my family members, your life, be that life that shines the light of God's character and nature accurately and clearly and powerfully to those that we have a chance, have an opportunity to impact. As His representatives in this world, may we be like a reliable road map. May we be like that reliable Big Ben, and that people can chart their course and they can set their watch by our lives, lived in covenantal faithfulness and in sincerity. God bless you richly as you pursue Him in that very calling. May I be a light of the world, a city that is set on a hill that cannot be hidden. God bless you. We're going to see you next time real soon again on the next segment of Bible Unplugged and our series in the Sermon on the Mount.